And now we are going to move swiftly on to our next panel, which is looking at, we're going to have another look at book and claim, but this time through a more focused window about what Airbus have got going on. So I'd like to introduce Paula Daroca Arcas, who's the head of business transformation and digitization for Airbus Corporate Jets. And Airbus Corporate Jets is a dedicated team within Airbus focusing on the business, corporate and governmental aviation. And they sell, customize and support private corporate versions of the proven Airbus aircraft platform. And lots of people in the room will be familiar with them. We've also got Lorenzo Pagnam from Comlux, Malta, who have been active in business aviation for over 20 years and operate a diverse fleet of about 20 aircraft, including numerous different types of Airbus and different Boeing, Bombardier, and smaller business jets. And the company is an approved maintenance facility supporting the operational needs of the fleet and VIP cabin outfitting activity. I see everyone's made their way up on stage, but I'll continue introducing everyone. We've got Nicola-Jane from Luxaviation. She's the group head of sustainability, who devises and implements the group's global sustainability strategy. They're one of the world's largest private aircraft operators with over 1,000 employees and a fleet of more than 250 jets and helicopters. The services include aircraft management and charter operations and the management of an extensive network of VIP passenger terminals across the globe. And finally, but most certainly not least, we've got Axel Rommer from OMV, who's the head of aviation since 2022. OMV, I'm sure lots of people in the room are familiar with OMV, in that they're the Austrian multinational integrated oil and gas and petrochemical company. They've been producing SAF since 2022, and Axel oversees the jet value chain, including sales, operations, and sustainable aviation fuel. So to begin with, Paula, I'm going to come to you first. Airbus has recently launched their book and claim demonstrator, which is very easy to remember because it's just ABCD. So good for anyone that needs to learn the alphabet or reminder. Could you explain what ABCD is? I almost got it wrong then. That's
ABCD.
Terrible.
So ABCD. It's
ABCD.
easy. Yes.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Airbus book and claim demonstrator. First of all, good afternoon to everybody. I hope that you can energize up a little bit, even though it's hard in the middle of the afternoon. At Airbus, we do understand that, of course, as it was said before, we do not want to stop flying to decarbonize. We want to decarbonize to keep on flying. And in order to do so, there are several levers, but one of the biggest ones that we can count on in the aviation industry is SAF. SAF, as we know, is not available everywhere, and we have a lot of customers that have shown an interest but didn't have access to that SAF. In order to do so, what we try to do is to bridge the gap between this demand, which is allocated a little bit around the world, and the production. So for that, we have launched this demonstrator where Airbus is playing a role of facilitator, where we are going to aggregate the demand of our customers, and we're also going to bridge and facilitate the gap towards the production.
So could you elaborate on your role as that facilitator and within the sort of ABCD framework, particularly in like the aggregation of demand and managing the transfer of those certificates between those involved?
So, as said, SAF is going to be one of the main solutions to decarbonize aviation. But in order to do so, we have to think about the triangle between the production, the demand, and the regulators. What we're trying to do with this demonstrator is, first of all, to understand book and claim, and to increase and advocate for book and claim, so increase the knowledge about our customers and democratize what book and claim is. We are trying to give access to SAF to customers, all kind of Airbus customers, but customers that do not have access, easy access to SAF. be it business aviation customers, helicopters, and even lessors that are not having that easy access to SAF. So try to aggregate that demand and give them an easy solution to buy SAF certificates. On the other hand, we want to influence the producers. So the producers, they're having quite a hard time to already ramp up in the SAF production. So if, on top of that, they have to target many different customers. The fact that we are facilitating this interface that gives them some kind of certainty of the volumes that they're going to be selling to us, and then we are going to be distributing to our customers. And thirdly, we want to influence the regulators and show them, lead by example, that book and claim is the right way to go. And
you're partnering with RSB on this, aren't you? Why are you partnering with them?
So we have, of course, done our research about what is going on in the SAF arena and what is going on the book and claim, and we see that there are many startups and companies coming along. So we have chosen to do this facilitator role with RSB, which is for us not only a very active, sustainable certification body in the different energy systems, but they also have a very robust book and claim methodology, and they have a very robust and certified registry already working. So it took us some time, but we have taken this project with them to understand what is the value that Airbus can bring in this value chain of SAF to really create this role into the methodology and the registry, and now we have proven already that it's working.
Nicola-Jane, why Luxaviation were quite early involved in this sort of project. What are the drivers behind Luxaviation getting involved, and how does it align with sort of overall decarbonisation goals that Luxaviation have got as an operator?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I think for us at Luxaviation, the primary motivation is the fact that the book and claim mechanism fits directly into our overarching environmental sustainability strategy. So when we distill that, we have our carbon reduction pillar, which SAF obviously falls directly into. But this is formed in two parts. So the first part being that we inherently support the physical supply and distribution of SAF, and we have targets in place to increase the facilities across our global operations. So ExecuJet FBOs, for example, that are offering the physical SAF. But in recognizing that there is, quite frankly, a supply gap that we need to bridge, this is where we find that the book and claim mechanism is really valuable for us. And it's becoming increasingly important because we are seeing what we call the rise of the eco-conscious traveler. So we're seeing customers become increasingly more aware of the impact of travel on the climate, and they're wanting to take actionable and credible actions to mitigate that impact. So for us, partnering with Airbus on this project really is a pragmatic approach to doing this. And for us, it provides a test bed to understand the voluntary demand, the appetite of our customers, and be an active contributor.
Lorenzo, Comlux are involved in ACJ as an operator. You do cabin completions. Do you just want to explain to everyone, how book and claim fits into your operations? Because you've got that added cabin completions dynamic, as well as sort of the operation sides as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, good afternoon all. So in fact, when it comes to the operational side of it, the reason why we are in are very similar to the one of Luxaviation. In fact, we wish to have SAF, we wish to uplift SAF, and we wish to pay for SAF, but there is no SAF. And an operation like ours fly to more than 500 airports per year, which is almost impossible to find SAF. So we want to find a practical way and to contribute to the cause, because we want to be there. We are a small player, but that's the reason why we try to team up with Airbus and other competitors, because we are competitors, but we all believe on the sustainability part of it. When it comes to the completion center, of course, we have quite good movements of aircraft. So we produce cabin, we test airplane, we fly airplane. So we try to bring as well the book and claim in there. Then, of course, there is the side of the customer. So in our business, the customer actually are very sensitive to it. We have customer that comes and ask to uplift SAF. We achieve to do that, but in very limited location. I mean, I recall Singapore. When we are in Singapore, we can find SAF, we can uplift, but obviously not worldwide and not globally. So that's why we believe that the book and claim is a good alternative to SAF.
Axel, you're the producer on the panel, and we heard earlier that, you know, oil and gas companies aren't all necessarily as active as they could be. So do you want to, you know, defend your side of it? How do you view book and claim and the role this has for you guys as producers?
Yeah, we as SAF producer, we consider book and claim as a tool for aggregate the voluntary demand and to de-risk our investment into current and future SAF production facilities. You were mentioning at the beginning, we started to produce SAF in 2022 in our refinery in Vienna. We call it more like a demo plant because volumes are relatively small, less than 10 KT per year. However, it provided us the opportunity to learn the technical side, the production, and also the commercialization of the product. So for that reason, for example, one of our first transactions was a book and claim transaction with Microsoft. In the meantime, we successfully passed FID for another SAF production facility in our refinery in Romania. So we have the clear target to produce more than 700,000 tons of sustainable fuels, SAF and HVO, until 2030. And for that, we think we need to act a bit differently than in this typical buy and sell relationship between a SAF producer, seller, and an airline. And for that reason, we were building up together with our partner Airbus the transformative partnerships.
Nicola-Jane and Lorenzo, for you are the operators here. So what are the challenges and the opportunities you see with this mechanism and how it sort of is evolving, looks to be evolving over sort of the near term, long term, and your relationship with your end customers as well? Who wants to take first stab at that?
I can go ahead, no worries. So I think for us, in terms of the, if we start off with the challenges, I think actually what we realized, and after conducting a couple of internal studies, is there are actually some psychological inferences that we need to firstly overcome. So for us, that begins with the education. What we realize as an operator is that a lot of our clients firstly don't understand what SAF is, what the benefits of SAF are. So we have a role as an operator to demonstrate and articulate exactly what that is, to increase the trust with our clients and increase the willingness in investing into solutions like the book and claim or otherwise the physical SAF. So I think in turn for us it's about overcoming any cognitive dissonance. So bridging the, or aligning the values of our customers with the subsequent behaviors that can be achieved through the book and claim. And in turn, we hope that we can actively contribute to the market development. We hope that over time that we will see the cost of SAF reduce. And in fact, maybe even see parity between the cost of SAF and conventional jet fuel over time.
Well, in fact, if I can add on that, which I totally agree, I mean, one of the challenges that I see is the administration part of it, because, I mean, it's not as simple as it should be. So I believe that this is one of the things that we really need to improve. We need to make it simple, we need to make it accessible, and we need to make it transparent. And that's, in fact, one other reason to work together as well with Airbus to enhance that, you know.
And indeed, with this demonstrator, we have learned a lot about the collecting the certificates from the producers and transferring that to the operators and at the end to the Scope 3 customers. But now we have to also learn how we're going to add this certificate flow to the commercial flow. So how are the producers selling the SAF to Airbus as an aggregator, how we're going to sell it to our operators, and how our operators are going to sell it to the end customers. Because of course, here where we're talking, it's about the voluntary demand. And this voluntary demand, it's coming not only from the operators, but from their business corporate travels. And this is where we need to understand the overall flow, and this is why this demonstrator is so important. Book and claim has a lot of benefits. One of the big benefits that it has is that you're going to reduce the emissions because you're going to avoid the transportation and the stowage emissions, and you're going to reduce the cost, of course, by the same, because you're reducing the transportation and storage cost. And on the other side, it has a mechanism that is proven because it's what's already mentioned this morning. It's based on what electricity is doing, so there is no mystery around it. But it has some, let's say, headwinds. And the headwinds that it has is that today it's only for voluntary demand because it has not been yet accepted by the regulator. So what we're intending to do, and we're seeing some good tendencies with SBTI, for example, is that they're thinking about book and claim because they see the added value about it and showing that it's working, showing the robustness of how we are proving all together as an ecosystem from the producers and the consumer sides, how this is all working. We might influence those voluntary and voluntary frameworks that are going to, at the end, influence the regulatory frameworks.
But building on the communication you've got with your customers at Airbus, you've got with your customers as operators, and we've had a panel already about the mechanism of book and claim. It's very complicated.
It's not.
You obviously weren't in the room earlier,
and we're here to prove that.
But the job is for you guys is to transfer this understanding to your customers and make them understand what it is that they're actually buying into, what you're encouraging them to do. That's the challenging aspect of it, is to make them understand actually what they're buying.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that a little bit, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because that really is the challenge that we have. And I think this is where marketing plays a key role in articulating that message clearly, transparently. So again, we can build that trust, we can build that willingness, because ultimately we are, the challenges that we have is greenwashing subsequently. And this is where our messaging needs to be very, very transparent. So I think it's a really good point to make.
Paula, coming back to Airbus, how do you see your role as sort of ensuring level playing field? Because you work with multiple operators, basically anyone with an Airbus aircraft pretty much. So how do you see in sort of allowing level playing field in terms of access to your demonstrator and then book and claim and SAF as for everyone, not just the big players?
Actually, big airlines are very equipped in workforce and skills to have their own sustainability targets and their own teams to understand the supply, the mechanisms, and all the regulatory framework. Then Airbus has the luck to have a very broad portfolio of customers. And the same as ICAO said, no country left behind, we think no customer left behind. We have helicopters customers that have the right and the target to decarbonize, but their volumes are little compared to airliners, so we need to bring a solution to them as well. We have business aviation. We all know that aviation is responsible of the 2% of the global emissions. Business aviation is 2% of that. So if you think about the demand of any of those customers, they are very much finger-pointed, and we need to bring solutions to them. Because even their volumes are important when you aggregate them to the overall decarbonization journey, but they're quite small for having significant deals with fuel producers. So our role, as we see it, is to aggregate all that demand, as I said, from the helicopters, business aviation, lessors that are also having some needs in the decarbonization because they do some flights in repositioning the aircraft and so on, and even smaller airlines that could have 2 or 3 tails. That demand, we need to help them. And this is where we're positioning ourselves, to try to increase their knowledge about sustainability, SAF, decarbonization, and book and claim, and to bring them solutions for them to be able to decarbonize.
Axel, what do you need as a producer? What are the enablers that you think need to be sort of ironed out to sort of make book and claim to sort of increase your desire to produce more SAF and scale your production and sort of allow it to become a central aspect, mechanism that you can use to indicate sort of how much you produce?
So what we need is certainty, and what we got is RefuelEU being present in the European Union. And I mean, this is what we got. It's for sure not a perfect scheme, but it provides us the opportunity to scale our production, to find new partnerships, and to make the SAF available and accessible. So the long-term view, that's important for us, even considering that the mandates will triple in 2030 and then in 2035 again. From a producer's point of view, that's not ideal, so a more gradual increase would have been prepared. However, this is what we have, and we see good opportunities to together with Airbus to develop new customer segments like the helicopter and the general aviation business.
So someone on Slido's asked a question about whether, you know, these business jet, we're talking about sort of business aviation predominantly here, whether these customers actually care, you know, how much the fuel costs for their flight, what fuel goes in it. Are they, you know, that engaged in this conversation? Do you think there's more work to be done there?
Well, in fact, I think I'm bringing our experience in Comlux. Yes, some of the customers ask themselves, so I don't even need to go and knock the door and tell them about book and claim and stuff. Some customers really want it. The problem is that we cannot give it to them. So some of our customers are government. So in fact, I hope and believe they want to have that even themselves. So there are other customers that are not interested as well. So, and this is where we need a little bit more work and marketing and try to push them, I mean, to take the direction. But in my current customer portfolio, we have as well customers that decarbonize independently, even without asking us. So as part of their business, of their sustainable action, they do that on their own. So there are different type of customer, of course. There are the aircraft owner that maybe are a little bit more conscious with that. And then there are the charter customer that those are the ones that maybe you need to convince a little bit more because they are not really aware. And remember, it's a world of brokers. So very hardly you speak with the end customer. You speak with the broker. So even in that part, you need to have even this middleman to support you with the mission.
I think just expanding on that, I mean, it is quite complex, as we know that there are various different motivations of our customers. Each have their own requirements, each have their own specific requests. And as I said earlier, you know, we are seeing the rise of the eco-conscious traveler, where people are increasingly becoming more aware of the impact from their travel and they're wanting to do something about it. Conversely, for those that perhaps aren't at that stage, we need to be taking an active role to educate them, to influence them to take a role in this position. We can't just stay passive. We actually need to take a proactive role in this space.
Someone's just asked a question about carbon offset and, you know, that pricing potentially being a limiting factor for how far book and claim can actually penetrate, because that's traditionally been what a lot of the conscious in sort of business aviation have looked to offsets for their sort of green credentials. Is that still a problem, or do you...
I think that's why these kind of initiatives are taking place. This SAF book and claim demonstrator, where we're trying to align the ecosystem of producers, the registry, and the customers, is trying to prove a solution in sector, in the aviation, for the aviation. Offsets are valid for any other industry. And what we in Airbus believe is that we need to lead this journey towards clean aerospace, and in order to do that, we really need to take SAF and the SAF uplift. So yes, offset could sometimes be a challenge because, of course, as long as book and claim certificates, SAF certificates are not yet validated by the regulators, it still has the same value. But nevertheless, once you convince your customers that what we're doing is for its own industry, I think that's the main difference. And also because it's helping. If you push for book and claim, there's going to be more production, more consumption, and at the end, there will not even be book and claim because we will find SAF everywhere. But until we have that point in time, really the book and claim is the right mechanism to bridge that gap.
So someone's asked a question about whether the book and claim demonstrator is a pure book and claim registry, is it a marketplace? Where does it actually fit within sort of book and claim? So
first of all, the main difference is that we have taken as one of the what we consider the most robust registry, which is the RSB registry. We have challenged that, and we have added a facilitator role in the middle. That's one thing. Secondly, what we have done is we are now buying big amounts of SAF certificates directly from the producers, where the ownership, even not the claimability, will remain at Airbus. And then Airbus, we will, once that we have this ownership, we will aggregate, we will cut it down in portions to our different customers, okay? And the reason why, what's the added value of Airbus is that we are demonstrating that it's working. We are trying to influence the ecosystem, but ourselves, we already consume a lot of SAF, so if it's not working, we could eventually absorb it ourselves, and we also have a huge portfolio of customers.
And of course, Airbus separately have made investments in SAF projects and off-take SAF as well for test flights and all that stuff. So it's just an added sort of SAF string to the sustainability bow for Airbus as well. So it's just sort of another thing that you can be active in. Axel, you mentioned Refuel EU, and someone has asked you about what your sentiment is around the revision of Refuel EU in 2027.
I think it would be necessary that the certification schemes, RSB and ICC, have a common approach with regards to the flexibility mechanism, so that it can be applied not only within one country, but in the voluntary market also cross-country, so that the physical supply can be decoupled from the certificate. That would, from our point of view, unlock further potential for SAF supply.
What's the panel thoughts on the scale of the voluntary market that can be tapped into through this book and claim demonstrates that Airbus got on more widely by book and claim. How far do you think this book and claim can take us in terms of unlocking voluntary demand?
Well, we're trying to influence the full ecosystem. We acknowledge that SAF has an additional cost, and also SAF book and claim, and we're not targeting anybody to do a drastic change to do 100% SAF tomorrow. What we're trying to do is getting the ball rolling and trying to reach out several customers, as we said, from the different arenas, so business aviation, helicopters, lessors as well, and in order to show there is an interest, a transverse interest in the ecosystem, and of course we see that once you start getting this thing moving on, there is more and more interest, okay? Sustainability and SAF was something that 2.5 years ago nobody wanted to talk about, and now everybody's talking about it. The awareness and the skills of the audience is increasing, and you see more and more people switching very quickly. So is there a demand? Yes, there is a demand. We have one of our early adopters is, for example, Novespace. Their final customers is the space agencies, and the space agencies are willing to do this voluntary demand, for example. So we see it. In helicopters, some of them would be hospitals, transportation, and they see this voluntary demand. So yes, we believe this voluntary demand is going to exist, is aggregating, and is showing the right signals.
We also see an increasing demand, but it will be interesting to see what will happen in 2035 when the mandate in EU will triple again. So there we are less optimistic that the increase will continue.
Someone's asked about how much SAF has been requested from passengers, customers. Can you give us sort of a rough figure on sort of how much is actually being requested at this point? I
can give you my figure. So Airbus Corporate Jets does not own its own aircraft, but when we charter aircraft to the different operators, we are requesting 10% SAF per definition since 2023 until 2030. That's one example. Airbus, as a group, has consumed, I think, 17.5 in overall its internal operation last year. So are we giving a number in terms of tons? No, I'm not able to do so. For the final business travelers, I don't know if you can disclose that kind of information, but the idea is not to have anybody doing, as I said, 100% tomorrow. But if we're able to have everybody doing 1-2% step by step, it's not going to be a huge commercial challenge. it's something that can be absorbed somehow or translated into the final customer, and this is the right direction that we believe we should all go.
In our previous panel about book and claim, there was a brief discussion about mandated SAF and whether you should be able to claim Scope 3 certificates on that because it's not actually stimulating any demand because it's still within a mandate. And we've obviously touched on book and claims not recognised in Europe as a system. So any comments on that aspect, from the alignment of policy and how you actually use it to, if it was to be involved as a policy structure to stimulate demand, how you'd fix that sort of subtle disconnect? Or any suggestions on how you could think about it in terms of driving demand? Because at the end of the day, that's what book and claim's there for. We recognize there is this disconnect, of course, between the regulations and the reputational demand. But we see more and more companies targeting to joining to voluntary targets. We, Airbus, ourselves, we did committed to Scope 3 targets to SBTi. So once that we increase this Scope 3 willingness, either from the reputational to the voluntary demand, I think we will be able to influence SBTi and the greenhouse gas protocol that at the end are the references that are being used by the mandatory frameworks. So we're doing what we consider is right to be done to increase the SAF uptake and at the end hoping and wishing and influencing the regulators. So just to finish off this discussion, because we're running up against afternoon tea. So just going down the line, what's the one key sort of action, takeaway, development that you think would be most critical to unlocking more widespread voluntary sort of book and claim adoption in sort of the next 5-10 years? Should we start this end and work to the far end? Lorenzo, should we start with you and then work?
Yeah, so, well, I would say we need to make it simple. We need to make it simple, we need to make it digital, we need to make it transparent. For example, in my opinion, a platform, maybe a global platform to buy and track the SAF certificate would really help, to simplify the process.
Axel?
Well, we at OMV, we consider SAF or decarbonization of aviation as an opportunity. It's our goal to transform from a company with a linear business model to a business model with circularity. So it's an opportunity, and for that reason, there's no doubt about it. We are going to fulfill the mandate and will make SAF available throughout Europe.
Nicola-Jane?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, it's about, as we've already said, simplifying it. We need processes that are autonomous, making that journey for our customers simple and transparent, but ultimately embedding it into our sales strategies, into everything we do, increasing the awareness so that we're making the transition more easy for our customers.
Finally, Paula?
Do SAF, consume SAF, fly SAF, ask for SAF. Either physical, if it's available, or through book and claim.
Perfect. That's a great note to end this panel on. Thank you so much all. And now we're going to break for coffee for half an hour before we come back and talk about feedstocks.